Hey everyone, join us as we follow Haruhiro, a timid young man who, despite his memory loss, reluctantly steps up as leader for inexperienced adventurers, embarking on a journey of self-discovery and growth in a strange new world. The story kicks off with a lively party of young adventurers trying to take down a goblin. Moguzo, the group's fighter, is really struggling to keep up as the goblin darts around, taunting him. Meanwhile, Shihoru is perched on a cliff, trembling in fear as the goblin turns its creepy eyes toward her. She fumbles to recite her spells, but can't seem to get the words out, frozen in panic as the goblin charges at her. Just when it looks like Shihoru is in deep trouble, Minato, the healer of the group, swoops in to save the day. He throws the goblin away like it's nothing, giving Shihoru a chance to breathe. Seeing this, Moguzo knows he has to step up and keep fighting. After all, he's the warrior of the team. Minato shouts that this is a life-or-death situation, and everyone needs to give it their all to beat the goblin. Even though goblins are usually weak, Haruhiro, the thief, can't shake the feeling that they might not win this one. The next morning, Haruhiro wakes up next to Ranta. Ranta teases him for still being sleepy, but Haruhiro insists his eyes just look that way. Ranta doesn't buy it and keeps pestering him. Soon, Minato shows up and asks them to get dressed and head to the courtyard. Panic hits Haruhiro when he realizes it's his turn to serve breakfast, but Minato calms him down, saying he already swapped shifts, knowing Haruhiro was exhausted from last night's goblin fight. In the kitchen, Haruhiro sees Moguzo cooking while Yume and Shihoru help out. Minato hands Shihoru some ingredients he found during their last battle. Later, the group gathers for dinner. Moguzo comments that the food might be a little undersalted, but Shihoru reassures him it's actually pretty tasty. Minato checks on Ranta and Haruhiro, asking if they're injured since he can't help with their blood loss. Ranta boasts he's perfectly fine, while Haruhiro admits he feels a bit dizzy but nothing serious. Minato suggests they go hunt a single goblin in the same spot as before. He explains that they struggled last time because 2 goblins were just too strong for them. As they chat, Minato reminds them this isn't just a game. Renji's team is closing in on them. The word game catches Haruhiro's attention, and he asks Minato what it means, but neither of them has a clue. It seems Minato just blurted it out without thinking. Haruhiro then shares how he ended up in the world of Grimgar. Before he opened his eyes, he heard a whisper that woke him up, but he couldn't remember anything else. He found himself surrounded by darkness. He got up and walked toward a door, stepping outside to find everyone else was just as confused about where they were and how they got there. In the next scene, they meet Brittany, the quirky chief of the Red Moon office of the Volunteer Soldier Squad. Brittany welcomes them to Grimgar and a town called Ortana. Renji, the silver-haired guy, asks Brittany about the Volunteer Soldier Squad, leading to a brief argument that quickly calms down. Brittany then pulls out a bag of silver and announces that anyone who joins the squad will get 10 silvers to start. Haruhiro realizes how serious this is. If they join, they have to fight monsters. If they don't, they'll starve. Later, Haruhiro heads to the Thieves Guild, where his instructor, Barbara, surprises him. She's shocked he picked thief as his first job and emphasizes that thieves only shine with experience. Barbara introduces herself and mentions she'll give him a nickname after his training. Haruhiro thinks she's a bit sadistic and merciless. She dubs him Old Cat because of his sleepy eyes. Back with his party, they chat about their instructors and joke around, but things get a bit tense when they discuss Shihoru's looks, annoying Yume. They set out to scout for goblins but only spot a pack of them, too many to take on. Once again, they return empty-handed, just like their last hunt, leaving them low on money and high on frustration. That night, Haruhiro woke up and noticed Minato was missing from his bed. Feeling restless, he stepped outside to look for him. Just then, he bumped right into Minato. Haruhiro asked if Minato had been out drinking. Minato admitted he had, leaving Haruhiro surprised since he never knew Minato drank. Minato explained that he went to Shelly's tavern on Hanazono Street, where all the volunteer soldiers hang out, to gather some info for the team. As Minato started a fire, Haruhiro couldn't help but be impressed that Minato was hustling while the others were snoozing. Minato then asked if Haruhiro liked to drink. Haruhiro shrugged, saying he wasn't sure since he had never tried it. Minato joked that maybe he went to the tavern because he liked drinking. Haruhiro suggested they all check it out together sometime, and Minato nodded in agreement. As they chatted, Haruhiro noticed the moon was a deep red. He wondered if it looked that way everywhere, or just in their spot. Still, something felt special about this place, and he knew their crew was in for something wild. The next morning, they entered the Empty Belly Forest. Haruhiro spotted a goblin drinking from a stream and quickly signaled his team. They got their weapons ready and crept toward the goblin. Hiding behind a bush, Haruhiro grabbed his dagger, ready to attack. But just as he was about to move, Haruhiro yelled for everyone to go after it. Yume shot an arrow and hit the goblin in the shoulder, but Ranta was busy fighting with a tree for some reason. In the chaos, Haruhiro tripped and fell into the riverbank just as the goblin turned to attack him. Minato shouted for him to watch out, but Haruhiro barely dodged. Remembering his training, he slashed at the goblin's ribs. wrist, but it only made it angrier. Minato yelled for everyone to jump in, and Ranta charged forward, but instead of hitting the goblin, he got kicked in the rear. Just when it looked like they were done for, Minato swooped in to save him. Shihoru cast a spell, but it went wrong, blinding everyone who wasn't affected. The goblin tried to jump back, but Ranta got a hit in. The goblin screamed, sending chills down Haruhiro's spine, but Ranta quickly bounced back and hit again. Haruhiro and Yume rushed in, but the goblin pushed them back. Shihoru took another shot and finally landed a hit, but just as Haruhiro was ready to finish it off, the goblin threw a dagger at him. The blade stabbed into his shoulder, and pain shot through him as the goblin lunged to finish him. In a final move, Haruhiro stabbed the goblin in the neck, while Ranta pushed it away and Maguzo smashed its head. Silence fell over the group as they took in what just happened. Yume ran to Haruhiro and pulled out the dagger while Minato quickly healed him. Ranta started searching the goblin's body and found a shiny silver coin. Suddenly, the goblin tried to run away, but Haruhiro wouldn't let it slide. He chased it down, stabbing it again and again until he was sure it was dead. Finally, he dropped to the ground, tears in his eyes as he dealt with the violence. After that, they headed back to town, selling their loot and splitting the money before going their separate ways for the afternoon. Haruhiro wandered through the market, taking in the busy scene. He spotted Ranta, looking sad and munching on food while the others enjoyed their day in their own ways. That night, they all met on the bridge, watching the sunset before heading back to bed, knowing they'd have to work hard again the next day to get some food. The next morning, Maguzo was chillin' and cooking breakfast for the whole squad. Haruhiro rolled up with some eggs, and Maguzo kept doing his thing. Haruhiro asked him if he liked cooking since it wasn't even his job. When Haruhiro wondered if Maguzo liked eating or cooking more, Maguzo suddenly got serious and rushed to deal with the boiling water spilling over. He said he was all about both, eating and cooking. Maguzo mentioned he enjoyed whipping up food for others, even if they didn't dig it. Haruhiro quickly told him everyone loved his cooking before heading out to wake the rest of the crew. Later, Yume had all the guys kneel down because the restroom wall was busted. Someone had been trying to peek. While Minato, Haruhiro, and Maguzo felt super embarrassed, Ranta was totally shameless, saying it wasn't a big deal. Yume called him out, threatening to report him, but Ranta reminded her there were no cops around. He then joked that she shouldn't take towels next time, making her realize he'd been peeking. Caught red-handed, Ranta called Yume flat-chested, but she didn't flip out. Instead, she played it cool, saying she wouldn't get mad no matter what he said. Ranta saw his chance and confessed he was the one peeking, which sent Yume charging at him in a rage. Days got rough as it rained every time they hit the forest, forcing them to huddle under tents. One day, Yume and Haruhiro went out and found a used campfire and goblin footprints. Haruhiro counted at least 3 sets and decided they should bounce for now. When they got back, the whole team agreed to come back the next day since they couldn't fight in the rain, meaning no cash earned today. 3 long days passed, and they were broke because of the heavy rain. Haruhiro was so poor he couldn't even buy a fresh pair of underwear, and had to keep washing and reusing the same one. The next day, they hit up a nearby town that was totally wrecked, but the good news was that the goblins there were easy to sneak up on. Haruhiro spotted a sleeping goblin in an abandoned house and told the gang. They got hyped up, ready to make the goblin slayer proud. Ranta tiptoed over and stabbed the goblin right in the neck. The goblin woke up screaming and ready to rumble, but Minato quickly knocked it out with a hit to the face, finishing it off with a whack to the head. They scored a bunch of loot from the goblin, which pumped everyone up, but Minato warned them not to celebrate just yet. They still needed to get back safe. After that day, this wrecked town became their go-to spot since they kept finding easy-to-kill goblins. Sometimes, they had to fight in the open against groups of 4 or 5 goblins, but they just avoided those and focused on the lone, clueless ones. Soon, they started stacking up cash, and finally, Haruhiro had enough to buy new underwear. Ranta and Maguzo splurged on food, bringing back loads to share, but Minato told them to chill on the spending. If they saved enough, they could learn some new skills to help them in fights. Meanwhile, in Yume's room, she and Shihoru were chatting, with Yume suggesting they could grab some clothes for indoors too. Noticing Shihoru wasn't too pumped, Yume complimented her cute hair clip and encouraged her to chat more with the boys. Shihoru promised she'd try to talk up more. Back in the boys' room, Haruhiro was staring at Minato while he read a book. He called out to Minato, thanking him instead of asking for a favor. Minato said he was the one who should be grateful to have friends like them. Haruhiro thought Minato could ask anyone for help, but Minato insisted he wasn't the type to ask for favors. He felt like he wasn't the kind of person others wanted to be friends with, but Haruhiro thought differently. In the end, Haruhiro told Minato they accepted him just as he was, calling him their friend and leader. They settled down to sleep. Meanwhile, Shihoru carefully placed her hair clip on the table, showing the love and care she was starting to give it. The next morning, Minato and Shihoru headed out to grab some supplies. On their way back, Minato spotted some birds and started feeding them. He noticed a girl watching him, so he asked if she wanted to try. She was like, nah, but then changed her mind. As she tried to feed them, a pigeon jumped on her, making her trip. Luckily, Minato caught her and asked if she was okay. He helped her up, saying he was stoked to finally chat. Shihoru was totally confused, wondering what Minato was up to. Later, the crew went to their usual ruins for some goblin hunting. Ranta saw a goblin and went in for the attack, but the gob dodged easily. While Ranta distracted it, Yumi used her new skill, the slasher, to hit it from afar. Seizing the moment, Haruhiro dashed in, dodged a blow, and stabbed the goblin in the back. Yume cleaned her weapons while Ranta looted the goblin, but more were lurking around. Yume used her shadow binding skill on another goblin, and Minato broke its arm, letting Ranta finish it off. Moguzo was holding his own, smashing goblins with his strength. After a successful morning, the team munched on lunch, chatting about how they'd grown stronger and could take on bigger goblin groups. Just as they were gearing up for an afternoon hunt, Haruhiro spotted something shiny. He jumped in front of Minato, taking an arrow to the shoulder. Haruhiro fell, and another arrow hit his leg as Minato rushed to help. The squad heard a girl scream. A giant goblin was approaching. Ranta charged at it while Moguzo fought another. Minato yelled for everyone to retreat, but they were outnumbered. They took cover in a building, but a goblin shot a perfect arrow that hit Minato. He kept running until they reached the forest, but he looked pale. Suddenly he collapsed. An arrow lodged in his back. Desperate, Haruhiro and the others tried to help, but Minato was the only one who could use healing magic. He tried to heal himself but didn't have the strength. As he gasped for words, he died from blood loss right in front of them. They frantically tried to revive him but failed. With no options left, they rushed him to a temple hoping for a miracle, but the old priest just shook his head, saying Minato was already gone. Ranta flipped out, threatening the priest, while Haruhiro begged for help. The priest calmly explained that without a proper burial, Minato would rise as a zombie under the Demon King's command. They asked about cremation, and the old man nodded. Haruhiro asked how much it would cost, and the priest said it was a lot, but he'd cover it since Minato was one of his best students. Furious, Haruhiro yelled that they'd pay for Minato's funeral, no matter the cost. Everyone mourned their calm, collected leader, who always had their backs. After cremating him, they scattered his ashes in a beautiful valley, saying goodbye to their true friend. After Minato's funeral, the group lies in despair, feeling lost without his leadership. Ranta finally stands up, declaring he's leaving. When Haruhiro asks where, Ranta simply scoffs, "Anywhere but here." Haruhiro and Moguzo find him sulking at a tavern later that night. Ranta admits he's done with adventuring, feeling drained and unwilling to face the forest again. Haruhiro insists they're adventurers. It's who they are. But Ranta snaps, blaming Haruhiro for Minato's death. Tensions flare until Moguzo, usually calm, shouts for them to stop fighting. A stranger named Kikawa overhears and offers some tough love. He suggests they find a priest to bolster their team, but Haruhiro doubts anyone would want to join the weakest group around. Kikawa promises to scout some candidates before moving on. The next day, they meet Mary, Minato's supposed replacement, but her stern demeanor and lack of warmth leave them uneasy. That night at the tavern, frustration mounts as Mary refuses to participate in battles, insisting her job is only to heal. When goblins attack, she ignores their formation, leading to Ranta getting hurt. Haruhiro pleads for her to heal him, but she dismisses it as a minor wound. As the goblins escape, Haruhiro drowns his sorrows in drinks, lamenting how easily they used to handle monsters with Minato around. Later, Renji, clad in impressive armor, drops by and gives Haruhiro a gold coin out of sympathy for Minato's death. Haruhiro, overwhelmed by guilt, returns it, igniting Ranta's fury over missed opportunities for gear. They realize communication is at an all-time low since Minato's passing, especially with the girls. That rainy night, Haruhiro waits for Yume, who's just out of the shower. He awkwardly asks if she's mad. She admits feeling excluded since Minato died. They share tears, finally venting their emotions and embracing each other like siblings. Yume vows to befriend Mary, promising they'll make Minato proud. Just then, Chako opens the bathroom window, misinterpreting the moment. Haruhiro stammers, "It's not what it looks like," but Yume teases him about her newfound seduction skills. The next morning, everyone gathered for breakfast, ready for another day of dealing with challenges. Yume said that Mary had been acting cold, and that they hadn't tried to be friendly. "I'm gonna make her my friend today," she declared. Moguzo wanted to be nice too, but said Mary never listened. Ranta joked that he'd make Mary fall in love with him, but everyone ignored him. Haruhiro suggested they take it slow since Mary couldn't just become friends with everyone overnight. Later, when they met Mary, they all greeted her. At first, she ignored them, but eventually responded and decided to follow along. Yumi tried to start a conversation. As they entered a ruined city, they spotted goblins and hid behind some rubble. Haruhiro made a plan for Ranta and Moguzo to attack first while he and Yume flanked them. The goblins were surprised. During the fight, Mary yelled at Moguzo to stay back, making Ranta angry. Ranta dodged an attack and stabbed a goblin, while Moguzo crushed his opponent. The last goblin was tough, but Shihoru immobilized it with a spell, allowing Haruhiro to deliver a fatal blow. Afterward, Mary checked Maguzo's head wound and healed him. They rested in an abandoned house, and Haruhiro tried talking to Mary again about different types of priests, but she brushed him off. Frustrated, he decided to drop it for now. That night, they went to the tavern. Mary entered but chose to sit alone, ignoring them. Ranta got annoyed, but Shihoru reminded him they hadn't invited her over. Just then, a young knight named Shinohara approached Mary, catching their attention. The next morning, they fought goblins again, and Haruhiro noticed Maguzo without his helmet. He urged Maguzo to buy one, and Yume offered to help. Ranta spotted goblins nearby, forcing Haruhiro to fight one. When a hidden goblin attacked Mary, Ranta kicked it away, saving her. Mary, now skilled with her staff, took down another goblin. That night, Haruhiro invited Mary to dinner, but she declined and left. Later at the tavern, Haruhiro asked Shinohara about Mary. He suggested asking Hayashi, who used to be in a group with her. Hayashi joined them and talked about how Mary used to be the heart of their team, always happy and ready to heal. But after a dangerous mission where a monster killed some of their friends, Mary lost her spark and became distant. Hayashi woke up to chaos. A beast was wreaking havoc, and Michiki was struggling to hold it back. He called for Mary's help, but when he looked over, he saw her sobbing, clutching her fallen comrades. She told him she was out of magic and couldn't fight. Just then, Michiki fell back toward them, urging Hayashi to take Mary to safety. Despite his reluctance, Hayashi pulled Mary away as Michiki bravely charged back, giving them one last smile before absorbing a deadly blow from the beast. Hayashi escaped with Mary, and explained to the group that she had lost hope and had been drifting from party to party, unable to find a place to belong. The group sympathized with her and mourned their fallen comrades. Later, they argued about Mary's sob story. Ranta thought it was pointless, while Haruhiro insisted they should connect with her. Ranta softened and agreed to meet Mary the next day, apologizing to Shihoru for his earlier comments, surprising everyone. The group joked about the change in his mood as they continued their banter. The next day, it rained. Haru and Yume spotted a goblin with Haru's dagger, but Yume stopped him from charging in. They decided to follow it back to its hideout. When they returned, Mary stood defensively, revealing her fear of being kicked out again. Haru reassured her, sharing the story of their past healer, Minato, and how they had neglected his feelings until it was too late. Haru encouraged Mary to be open with her emotions. When he called her his friend, she was shocked, but the rest of the group backed him up, even Ranta. After a light-hearted moment, Haru invited Mary to help with a shopping trip, but she declined, saying, "Not yet," before walking away. Haru stayed hopeful as they ventured into the market, bonding and making memories. Mary started to warm up to the group, and as they tackled missions together, their skills improved. Haru discovered his newfound ability to hit goblins where it counted, and the team felt a surge of pride. That night, unable to sleep, Haru sat outside, lost in thought. Suddenly, he saw an illusion of Minato, and they reminisced about the group's growth. Haru smiled, wishing he could show Minato how far they had come. The next day, Haru's crew met up in their usual hangout spot, forming a circle with their hands stacked in front of them to cook up a plan. Mary, looking a bit unsure, put her hand on top, signaling she was in. A moment of silence dragged on until Ranta nudged Haru and told him to say something. Haru, kinda clueless, broke the ice with a lame question about how everyone had slept. "Best sleep ever," the crew chimed in, but then Mary piped up, saying she had a rough night. Haru nodded, admitting he couldn't shake off thoughts about Minato. Suddenly, Mary straight up asked if Haru thought he had what it took to avenge Minato. Haru confessed he thought he could keep his cool while avenging Minato, but he worried he would go all impulsive when the moment hit. Mary reassured him that he wasn't alone. They were all in this together. With a serious vibe, Haru vowed to level up for Minato, saying he wanted everyone to make it out alive. Mary opened up about how she couldn't save her friends in battle. Haru reminded her that they had lost their priest too, and stressed they needed to protect each other this time around. Yume and the others showed support with some encouraging gestures, and Mary promised to step up and protect everyone, vowing never to let any of them bite the dust again. Haru gave the group a boost with his quirky, "break a leg," and they all repeated it, confused but hyped. After their little pep talk, they geared up to bounce. Ranta was still on about what Hal meant, but Haru just shrugged. Mary gave him a knowing nod before strutting off. In a busted-up building where goblins were chillin', the group crept up quietly, ready to pounce. They launched a surprise attack, with Yume landing a sick shot on one of the goblins, giving Haru the chance to jump in. As they charged in, Haru was caught off guard by how slick these goblins were with their counter moves. In the chaos, Yume got stabbed in the shoulder by a goblin, causing Ranta to lose it and rush in. Haru hurried over to help Yume, but the goblin overpowered him like it was no big deal. Just when he thought he was toast, Mary jumped in, landing a solid hit and giving Haru a chance to strike back. He slashed at the goblin, but it shoved him away, leaving him wide open. Mary quickly cast a healing spell on Yuma, fixing her shoulder in a snap. She helped another teammate dealing with a bigger goblin while their witch put the giant goblin to sleep with a spell. They regrouped and pushed deeper into the hideout, where they spotted a goblin dozing by a chessboard. Ranta moved in, ready to finish it, when out of nowhere, Mary got shot by an arrow. Panic hit as the crew rushed to her side. Ranta yelled at the goblin that shot her, trying to chase it down, but Haru stepped in to shield Mary from another arrow. What should have been an easy win turned into a full-on brawl as they scrambled to fend off the goblin ambush. Determined to avenge Mary, Haru went after the goblin that shot her. As they went toe-to-toe, Haru found himself losing control when the goblin started choking him. Just when he thought he was about to black out, Yume's voice broke through, urging him to fight back. Later that night, after patching up Mary's wounds, the group headed to Minato's grave. They reminisced about their time together, the atmosphere heavy with nostalgia. As snow started to fall, Haru told Minato they had finally become legit volunteer soldiers, even snagging their badges. Ranta tried to argue against the sentiment, but Yume gave him a look, telling him to pipe down. Each member took a moment to talk to Minato. When Shihoru stepped up, she placed Minato's badge on the gravestone and broke down in tears. Yume wrapped her in a hug while the others stepped back, giving her space to grieve. The group headed back to their hideout, feeling heavy-hearted after their emotional moment. Haru and Mary had a heart-to-heart about their painful losses. Haru finally felt that Mary's trust in the team had fully blossomed, and she was ready to go to war for them. The next day, Haru woke up, buzzing with the thrill of a day off. While brushing his teeth, the thought of a chill day after endless battles made him giddy, but he was hit with a wave of confusion. What the heck did one even do on a day off? He couldn't remember. As they tore into the warm bread, Haru casually asked about Ranta. To his shock, Moguzo revealed that Ranta had been MIA since morning, hinting he might have some secret plans. After munching together, Haru learned he was the only one without a plan. He bade farewell to Moguzo and wandered toward a bridge, where he found Shihoru playfully coaxing some birds. "Hey, you like those feathered pals?" he asked, and she replied with a soft smile that she was just passing time with them. As they watched the sunset paint the sky, Shihoru opened up about how happy she was to be on the team, and Haru reassured her she was a vital part of the crew. Meanwhile, Yumi was still snoozing in her room. Haru left her behind and stumbled upon Mary at a cafe terrace, enjoying a relaxing coffee. She invited him to sit, and as they chatted, he realized these lodgings meant more to Mary than he thought. Memories of her lost comrades lingered here. Ranta, on the other hand, lounged in his boat, impressed as he watched Yume climb a mountain with nothing but her bare hands. Once the gang gathered at their usual bar, Haru inadvertently suggested heading to Cyrene Mine. Ranta jumped on the idea, and despite the danger, they collectively decided to explore it. Mary suddenly went pale, excusing herself. Haru quickly followed, calming her anxiety over the mine, a place tied to her painful past. She vowed to move forward, supported by her new comrades. The next day, Haru paid 50 silvers to learn the spider technique, only to find out it was way tougher than it looked. His instructor didn't hold back, pushing him to his limits while teasing his stances. After brutal training, she sat on him, offering advice that stung but made him stronger. Finally, with their gear packed, the group set off for Cyrene Mine, ready to confront whatever lurked in the shadows, with Haru narrating its dark history. Once human territory, now a monster-infested nightmare. Their adventure was just beginning. The crew found themselves in a wild battle with some new monsters. Chaos everywhere. Ranta and Haru, both melee fighters, struggled to keep up while the rest of the gang took down foes with ease. Yume showed off her Star Strike technique, launching blades and wiping out enemies in style. Haru tapped into his spider technique and took out a monster, but Ranta was still wrestling with his. He tried a new move, but the creature came back swinging. Everyone watched, worried, as Ranta pushed himself hard. Haru offered to help, but Ranta was too proud to accept. After a tough struggle, he finally brought down the beast. After their win, the group inspected the fallen foes. Mary told Haru that these kobolds had protection talismans, but they were the weakest type. Ranta, always on the lookout for loot, ripped a steel nose ring off a corpse. Haru felt uneasy about Ranta's brutality, but kept it to himself, reminding himself they were the intruders here. They decided to head through the wells to reach the third level, where tougher kobolds and a defense machine awaited. As they reached the second level, they noticed the kobolds were all snoozing. Mary warned them that they'd wake up if anything significant happened. As they tiptoed past a narrow passage, Moguzo suddenly asked if they heard something. The crew exchanged glances, sensing danger. Ranta spotted some sleeping kobolds and suggested taking them out for easy loot. Haru firmly disagreed, wanting to respect the enemy even if they were unaware. Ranta scoffed, claiming he wasn't a demon, just a servant of the dark god Skullhead. As they bickered, a group of high-class kobolds ambushed them. Luckily, Shihoru froze them in place, allowing allowing the team to take them down. Haru landed a crucial hit on one, and they quickly checked in with Mary, who was fine. Later that night, Haru reflected on Ranta's stubbornness, wondering how things might change if he were in charge. He called Ranta outside for a talk, but Ranta brushed him off. When they finally chatted, Haru scolded Ranta for not being a team player. Ranta snapped back, saying he didn't care what others thought. The next morning, Haru woke to Yume practicing her knife throws, while Mary showed off a new spell. But Haru's frustration with Ranta kept bubbling up as Ranta charged in recklessly, almost hitting him. Haru channeled his anger into battle. Maguzo demonstrated his fast thrust technique, taking down enemies left and right. They defeated all the kobolds except for the oldest one. Haru quickly told everyone to surround it, but Ranta rushed in and finished it off. With that done, they moved to a peaceful field, a total contrast to the chaos. Yume spotted cute creatures frolicking around, but Ranta lunged toward them with his sword. Haru jumped in to stop him, leading to a quick argument until Mary shushed them, signaling danger. They accidentally triggered a booby trap, waking up nearby kobolds. Mary panicked and told everyone to be quiet. Suddenly, chains rattled, and the mega demon, Death Spots, appeared, swinging a sword from one of Mary's fallen friends. Mary froze in fear as Haru realized the danger. They needed to get out of there fast before the demon caught wind of them. Haru scrambled to devise a plan to keep everyone safe without attracting the monster's attention. Mary drifted into a deep slumber, cozy against a tree, until she was jolted awake by the ghostly figure of an old comrade. The memory sparked a flashback to a carefree day when her team decided to tackle the Cyrene mine again. Their leader, Michiki, joked about their rivals pushing further into the mines, filling the air with laughter. Lost in nostalgia, Mary was suddenly pulled back to reality by Haru, who shook her out of her reverie. Apologizing for her distraction, they breathed a sigh of relief as Michiki's sword dragged the death spot away. They pressed on to a metal melting site, where Mary warned everyone to stay sharp. After a brief rest, Haru swiftly eliminated a guard, and they sneaked into a hidden cave. Shaken, Mary picked up a sword that felt all too familiar. Just then, Yume heard footsteps, and Ranta threw a glowing stone, revealing 3 cloaked figures approaching. Haru realized they were cursed victims of the No-Life King, Mary's fallen comrades. She called out to them, expressing her longing, but instead of recognition, they readied for battle. With determination, Mary stepped forward, ready to face them, and Haru rallied the team. The battle erupted as the corpses unleashed powerful spells. Mary charged through a magical firewall cast by her comrade, breaking the curse and turning the corpses to dust. As she embraced them one last time, tears spilled from Michiki, a heart-wrenching goodbye echoing in the air. After the fight, the group reflected on their fallen comrade's strength and vowed to grow stronger. They shared light moments, discussing dreams and ambitions, until their peace shattered with the arrival of the Death Spot. Haru ordered a retreat, but Ranta heroically saved him from a deadly attack. When the team was nearly out, the Death Spot struck, causing Ranta to fall back, insisting Haru escape. With a heavy heart, Haru left Ranta behind, vowing to keep the team safe. Meanwhile, Ranta faced the Death Spot alone, ready to charge despite the odds stacked against him. Ranta barely managed to escape, climbing out of a filthy well and hiding among some disgusting, gooey monsters. It had been gross, but perfect for keeping the kobolds off his trail. He summoned his magic caterpillar, which told him to embrace death, making Ranta reflect on how close he had been to it lately. Meanwhile, Mary had been healing Haru while the rest of the crew argued about their next move. They all agreed. Rescuing Ranta was the top priority. Yume, still upset with Ranta for calling her flat-chested, couldn't help but admit how terrifying the caves were, especially being all alone. Tears welled up in her eyes, and Shihoru had comforted her. Haru and Maguzo had remained hopeful, insisting that Ranta was too stubborn to die easily. The squad set off to save him, but back in his hiding spot, a kobold had crept up on Ranta. Right before it attacked, Ranta stabbed the beast, but the noise had alerted more enemies. Bleeding and exhausted, he had been forced to run again, with his caterpillar whispering that death might be the easy way out. Ranta had dove into a shed, thinking about Yume and regretting not having more fun teasing her. Suddenly, Deathspot had burst in, locking eyes with him. Ranta screamed and bolted, with Deathspot right on his heels. Just when things seemed hopeless, Yumi had fired an arrow, hitting the monster and saving Ranta's sorry butt. The gang had jumped in, battling the kobolds while Mary healed Ranta. Haru had checked if Ranta could still run, and Shihoru had blinded the enemy, giving them the perfect chance to escape. In their hiding spot, Mary had kept patching Ranta up, and Yumi couldn't help but tease him. Ranta had shot back with his usual flat-chested comment, until Mary had threatened to stop healing him, forcing him to shut up. Finally, they had gotten a moment to breathe. Just as they had been about to leave, Deathspot had charged at them again. The group, already exhausted, had struggled to fight back. Haru, with one last burst of courage, had told everyone to run while he dragged Deathspot into a pit. Ranta had pulled Mary to safety as the group fled. Haru, on the verge of passing out, had heard Ranta shouting for him to stay alive, pushing him to keep fighting. Out of nowhere, Haru had unlocked a new power, seeing green rays that pointed him to Deathspot's weak spots. With a final stab to the eye, he had taken the monster down, breaking his sword in the process. Haru had collapsed, but woke up to find Mary beside him, laughing and crying with relief. Outside, the team had celebrated, safe and sound. Muguzo had handed Haru a bowl of soup, and Ranta had tossed him a bag of gold, their mission reward. It turned out, Ranta had suggested they split it evenly, showing respect for Haru as the leader, though Haru hadn't seemed too impressed by Ranta's sudden maturity. Later, the group had explained how they had found Haru passed out next to Deathspot's body. Muguzo had proudly shown off Deathspot's sword, planning to make it his new weapon. With the nightmare over, the team had felt stronger than ever. Mary had fixed Haru's necklace and placed it back on him, and Haru, feeling truly home, had thanked her. They had hit the bar, raising their glasses to Haru's victory, even getting Mary to smile and relax for once. As the night wound down, Renji had apologized to Haru for his past behavior after Minato's death. Haru had admitted he hadn't dealt with the loss well either. The next day, Haru had visited Minato's grave, telling him about their recent adventures and the weight of leadership. In a touching moment, he had seen an illusion of Minato smiling at him, bringing him peace. Haru had looked up at the sky, feeling lighter, knowing his friend was at peace too.